So next talk is by Konstantin Boudnik from WANDisco. There's a company that does a lot of cool stuff. They do fault tolerance and things like this, but they also have these Superman ads on 101. I don't know if you've seen them. There's a Superman with, it says WANDisco.
Invincible Hadoop.
Yeah, Invisible Hadoop, that's it.
And the hairy hands on the picture, I actually belong to our creative director, who is very muscular guy.
It's very cool. Okay, so take it away.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and my name is Konstantin Boudnik. I will be talking about Spark and Shark integration into enterprise stack, and a little bit about myself. I am, as I said, director of engineering at BigData at WANDisco, and basically putting together the whole stack of big data analytic components on top of our non-stop Hadoop. I'm also Apache and MR unit committer, contributor to Spark and Shark, co-author of BigTop, and again, I see a couple of the guys from BigTop community. Thanks a lot, guys, for a great job. I will talk about our stuff a little bit later today. And what I am going to be talking essentially is, because my slot has been originally designed for 30 minutes, I would try to cramp it out into 15. So I cut off quite a bit of the technical stuff, and I'd rather talk about the community and open source, and how open source essentially helps our customers, the enterprises, to implement and adopt such amazing solutions as Spark and Shark. A couple of words about WANDisco. So some people know that WANDisco is essentially the company behind non-stop data, and apparently continuously available Hadoop or non-stop Hadoop, where we do multiple masters for HDFS. However, what people oftentimes do not know is that WANDisco is also the first company actually offering commercial support for Spark and Shark, going back to, I don't know, June this year. Offering commercial support means that your enterprise customers, the people who pay money, have to be able to grab your product, have an incredible, easy installation and configuration experience, and run it and achieve their goals. And the gentleman who was doing the previous talk, he said that he spent quite a bit of time doing the integration points, trying to make sure how the bits are working with each other. That's essentially what we do, and the way we do this is another open source project called BigTop that works as a focal point for integration of software stacks. At any rate, I want to talk about the open source a little bit. And the open source essentially, as the way I see this, is a force of a natural evolution. And if you look up the definition of word anarchy, you'll come to the point where it consists essentially of two Greek words, an and archos, which literally means no ruler. And open source actually fits the bill pretty well. So most apparent characteristics of open source is fast fail on your own dime. You fail, there's nobody to blame for. It essentially does not bend into any authority. You cannot control open source by decree, right? You have to be a person with merit in order to have a word in open source community. It's essentially very resistant to political correctness, also known as horse crap. And it creates huge competitive advantage for companies that can embrace it properly. So the direct results of these characteristics are essentially highly successful projects. It's innovation that goes up to the limit. I mean, it's just an awesome innovation, essentially, in open source community, and Spark and Shark are the great examples of it. It's very technologically disruptive, and once projects are mature, they rule the world, and empirical evidences of that are numerous. It's powered by Linux world, and Android that would never double again because it's already at 53% of the market share. And Firefox as the choice of the web browser in the world, and so on and so far. My slide is limited anyway. So what open source means for people who actually participate in open source? Well, anyone can do whatever they want to, right? And I think actually I'm running on the older version of the slides, but that's okay. It's very innovative. We can create things, we can abandon things as we go, sometimes creating, backward incompatibilities and all. And there's certain level of stability and backward compatibility and fault tolerance sometimes, and this and that, and things of any nature. However, what enterprises are looking for is slightly different. The openness they understand is different from the open source. The stability is different from the open source. And backward compatibility, as well as the fault tolerance and the configuration and deployment management, are different from open source understanding of it. So when you look at it, you can see that the goals between the enterprise and open source are essentially well aligned. However, the semantics are pretty different. So open source, the enterprise is looking for the stability at the limit of rigidness, right? So like Red Hat haven't had any changes since 1867 or whatever, right? I mean, very stable platform, very few innovations in it, right? Very hard to get newer software on top of the Red Hat and stuff like that. Again, not bashing Red Hat, of course. And backward compatibility for enterprise is something like, okay, so year 2013, we're still running on JDK 1.3. We so backward compatible, High availability for enterprise means like you have a minute downtime a year, you out of $100 million or something, right? So I mean, it's different in two different words. And essentially, for system integrator, the people like us, the challenge is to bridge these differences in the semantics, right? So, case study. So one of our customers, major telecom system integrator, Nokia Siemens Network, what they have as a requirement is Hadoop 1.0.3 running on top of OpenJDK 7. Not everybody are in love with Larry Ellison, apparently. Hive 11, because it has many interesting features, Spark 08 and Shark 08. And where the challenge is coming from is that you have essentially 5 different components that quite a bit intertwined and have an enormous ability to actually influence each other in the way they're working. So just to remind you how the stack looks like for Spark and Shark. So there's quite a bit of bits that come in from Hive. And there are some optimizations that Shark puts on top of it, which in combination sits on top of the Spark, which sits on top of the HDFS, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, an attempt to fix a bug in a system like that leads to something like this. So you actually have to span through multiple components. If you need to fix, I don't know, the memory leak, for instance, right, somewhere in Hive, you oftentimes might need to do corresponding changes in Shark. And now imagine that you have to address it on top of the older HDFS, which might have its own issues and stuff like that. So sort of challenging. The next challenge is lost in translation sort of thing, right? So most of the Hadoop ecosystem is Java, Spark and Shark, Scala. I'm not bashing the Scala, not in the least. But what I'm saying is that when you're trying to chase a bug somewhere with a debugger, you keep going down to Scala stack deeper and deeper and deeper until you actually forgot where you started from and what you're doing at all. So it's a little bit. But for those who do not understand Japanese, essentially this Japanese line says exactly what the English on the top, it says what it means. But anyway, another challenge is a bunch of the components, they have different release criteria, different release schedules. And for instance, you might have a situation where your customer is looking at the fix in Hive and saying like, hey guys, we need this so badly. And when you're trying to see if the feature would be available in next release, turns out that, oh well, your train left already. And essentially the fix will happen just in the release after next. which means that you have to work on the backport. And unfortunately, in the highly dynamic communities, the fixes sometimes turn out to be the whole feature, which cannot be backported that easily, and you know where I'm going. So, and last but not least, problem in the enterprise stack accommodation from the open source to the commercial world is impatient customers. They want everything today, they want everything now, and oftentimes you hear like, hey guys, check it out, so Hive 11 just got released, let's use it, right? Oh, well, the open source release doesn't necessarily mean that you can use it immediately. You have to file it, you have, you know, bang some corners in place and whatever the shipyard's saying, right? You cut to the plan, bang in place or whatever it is. So, and a lot of other things. And unfortunately, the complexity of open source stack is not as awful as this one, but who knows, one day we might get there as well. So anyway, now talk about the lessons learned and how we dealt with the system. I think I'm running almost out of time now. What you need to do to successfully bring a bunch of the open source, loosely connected open source projects into enterprise and be successful with it. Well, do proper system integration. That my grateful, humble thanks are going back to the BigTop community, where the integration of the software stack becomes so easy that you pretty much don't need to think about this. You just specify the version in the bill of materials file, you click a button, build yourself packages, fire up the cluster, run integration tests, you're done, right? So if it works, it works. If not, you back to the drawing board and try to find the cause of errors and stuff. So preferably use Git because of the flexible branching model. I think we would be dead if we were using Subversion by the time, considering the complexity again and span of the changes across multiple projects and all. So to give you an example, for instance, we are using essentially a forked version of Hive 11 release in order to apply changes that are necessary to run Shark successfully on top of it. And these changes essentially could be coming from Hive 12 or trunk of Hive, and sometimes actually just a totally fresh development, right? Which never been committed to Hive yet. So well-thought branching model is the must to have. Focal point of integration, as I mentioned, the BigTop is great to have. So you have to collaborate with open source. If you do not do this, you run in a huge risk of forking and essentially falling behind and drawing yourself irrelevant. Backporting, forward porting, I already mentioned that you have to keep up with open source as much as possible. Continuous integration and delivery goes without saying. Tests are the must, and as often you do this, more often you do this, you less issues you have normally. We had to simplify the development and work with Shark community closely to move from Org Apache Hive into EDU CS Berkeley Shark, because otherwise every single time you're trying to build Shark, you have to make sure that you clean up your local Maven repository, you install, you know, the artifacts from the proper branch and yada yada, so you run in risk of stepping on the landmine essentially here. What else? Education. So work with your customers. Make sure they understand that open source release is not, yes, let's deploy it into the data center. And of course, all sorts, again, coming from BigTop, such as deployment management, Puppet deployment, configuration management are highly helpful. So just today, we've been setting up the demo you can see outside, where all I needed to do to deploy Spark into Hadoop cluster is essentially run yum command, yum install command, and change one line in the config file. So, and Spark was up and running in no time. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Questions? So I have one question. Does
I presume I
BigTop-
did pretty good job. There's no questions.
Yeah. So does BigTop support Spark?
Yes, in fact, actually, most recent release of BigTop 07, which has been rolled out, I think, last month, has Spark 08 incubation as one of the components. So yes, it's in BigTop, so you can download it and run it, and it works.
Shark?
Shark not yet, but we're working on that probably by January next year.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, let's thank the speaker one more time.